Welcome to the podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time, a CASSource family production. In this episode, we are going to talk about sports psychology, putting yourself out there, and being present. Our guest today is Chris Covert, founder and CEO of Achievement Consulting. Chris has spent 15 years working with elite-level athletes and organizations in the fields of coaching, leadership, organization, motivation, and mental training. Chris has spanned both coasts. He currently lives in Charleston, South Carolina, and is a graduate of Cal State Fullerton. Chris works with athletes and businesses from all over the U.S. He is focused on helping individuals to achieve success by staying present and being organized. Chris brings unique perspectives of someone within the psychology industry. He has me thinking clear on many topics, and I know he can help any business owner or entrepreneur with their business. Chris provides great knowledge in both his craft of the sports psychology world and his life of running a business. With that combination, you can imagine how excited we are to have him on the podcast. Let's get into it. Chris, welcome to the Entrepreneur Perspectives podcast. It's great to have you.
Thanks so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so we're going to get started with 10 questions requiring a more thoughtful response and end with 10 rapid-fire questions. You ready to get going?
Fantastic. Let's go.
All right. So you heard the intro about you, but of course we can't do you justice in one opening statement. So tell us something real about you that the audience doesn't know.
Oh, that's a hard question. But when I started out in the sports psych world after graduate school as a track and field coach, and when I was 25, I became the youngest head coach in the country at the time at Southern Connecticut State University in New Haven in track and field and cross country. And a couple months after that, I was lucky enough to be named the youngest NCAA regional coach of the year ever at 25. Now looking back on it, I think, how did that happen? But obviously, I was getting something right. But that's a little fact that I think most people don't know. It was an exciting time, and had some great memories there. And but man, I'm getting old because that was 10 years ago.
Time goes fast, and you've spanned this country. I mean, you were in California, you're in Charleston now, but you were up in Connecticut as well.
Right.
Wow. So you've seen a lot of different things. That's great.
Oh yeah. Snow.
Yeah.
Heat.
Yep.
Hurricanes. Yeah. I've seen a little bit. Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure. So in your day-to-day work at Achievement Consulting, what is your focus and your ultimate goal for the business and yourself?
So, I mean, what we do is, we work in several things. I mean, we're probably one of the most unique businesses that someone can find in the country. Obviously we do a lot of sports psychology and mental conditioning with professional and collegiate and elite high school teams throughout the country. So that's one of the things that we do. The other thing we do is we do organizational consulting and management for nonprofits and small businesses. And we also do the same for political organizations. I think that, like I said, that makes us very unique. We do a lot for smaller campaigns. We do a lot for larger campaigns. We worked with a presidential campaign this last year in 2016. And really what we're trying to do is the same thing amongst all the clients that we have. It's a combination of two things, right? Is that we want to heighten their sense of awareness, heighten the individual and the team or the organization's sense of awareness. And that sounds a little, philosophical, I guess, but we really, I think that everything comes from a basis of becoming more aware of what you're doing from a strategic standpoint, more aware of the situation that you're in, more aware of your body and your thoughts and your emotions and your actions. And then from there, we really try to create strategies in which we can help, people perform at their best, whether it's routines or relaxation methods, stress management methods for athletics. Or whether it's strategic management for organizations, teams as well, and political organizations. So we really run the gamut in trying to get people to understand what they're doing, try to find the gap in which things might not be working well, and then try to assist them in performing the best that they possibly can, not just as an individual but as group.
Yeah, so was the core of it with working with athletes, and then other people started to see your work, and then while you're pulling that sled and working with athletes, business owners, politicians, people along those roads, they started coming to you as well, or how did that play out?
It's a little bit of a longer story, but like I said, I graduated from Cal State Fullerton with an undergraduate degree in California, which is kind of the sports psychology mecca of the world. And with Ken Revisa, who was there, Ken's was a mentor of mine, a professor of mine, a good friend of mine now. And I then went to New Haven, Connecticut, on the other end of the country. Received a master's degree in sports psychology from Southern Connecticut, and then really with the intention of coaching. But I continue to do sports psychology consulting on the side with local teams and things like that. And then in around 2011, my son was born in 2011. And at the same time, I was thinking about getting out of coaching. My wife was a union organizer at the time, and all the friends that we had were involved in organizing or in political movements. And they asked me if I wanted to volunteer. I said yes. Then they asked me 3 weeks later if I could run a bunch of the campaigns. Wow. With no experience, but it was all the same. It was recruiting and it was relationship building, and we won 14 out of 15 seats. I stopped coaching, and I realized what I thought I was going to end up doing for the rest of my life, and moved to Charleston, where my wife took a teaching job. Started with nothing, was a volunteer, didn't ask for any work to get paid for anybody. And just really was 2 or 3 coffees a day. Anybody that I could get my hands on that was involved in politics. And, my thing was, if I met someone, they always gave me 3 names. That was the deal. And went from a volunteer to getting paid to end up running presidential campaigns. And then from there, as I was doing that, as a side income, I guess you could call it a side hustle, I guess. I'm not a big fan of that phrase, but that's kind of what you would call it, I guess now. I was still doing sports psych work and, working with teams and, colleges and individuals and high schools in the area in Charleston. And then, when I got done with the presidential campaign in 2016, I kind of had to make a decision on if I was going to stay in politics or not full time. And I really just decided to form the company so we could blend both. And, we get, people who were professional baseball players to people who were professional hockey players to people who were running for state house seats, from, nonprofit organizations that have, multi-million-dollar bankrolls. I mean, we get those kind of calls all the time, which is very unique. And I think that it really keeps me fresh. And, we're excited to work with anybody who's doing good work and wants to do good work for themselves or their team across the country, no matter what they're doing.
Yeah, well, it's fascinating not only what you do and the different types of people, like you just said, that you work with, but the climb there and the getting out there and, like you said, getting the 3 names. And yeah, the hustle word is absolutely overused, but somehow, some way, it's the word that you have to use. But so it's important. You got out there and you did it. It's just we always talk about in our business, on one side of the business, we have the insurance business, and activity is the only answer, right? The question is what? You got to get out there and you got to go meet people. And of course you have to know what you're doing, right? So if you go and meet all these people, but you don't know anything about sports psychology, well, it's not going to last very long. But the first step is you have to be showing up, and that's half the battle. And that's what you did. And here you are, and doing many different things. And it's a fascinating thing, like I said, of who you work with, but even more so how you got there.
It is. It's a hell of a journey, and I tell people all the things and the places that I've seen, the people that I've met who I have relationships with, and they wonder how I sleep, and they wonder how I do everything. But it's what excites me, and it's something that I enjoy doing, and it's nice to do sports for a little while, then focus on the environment or something like that, then try to talk to somebody who's wanting to run for a certain office. It's really exciting.
Yeah, so I mean, that is a great question. I'm sure people ask you, how do you balance it all? Because you have interest in politics, in sports, in family, in just your everyday life. How do you balance it? Like, yeah, you can obviously shift and say, well, I can put some energy into this and then go back over here. But what goes through your mind as you are trying to balance your life and all your great interests that you do have?
I tell the same thing to athletes that I'll tell to you, athletes and organizers that I work with in campaigns and also in business. So pretty much all across the gamut, because this is a huge problem, I think, especially with young people, and especially with young people, meaning like college kids and people that are even semi-professional or professional athletes. Organization solves all your problems, and you really don't understand how important that is. Everybody has a different routine to get organized. I get myself organized in the evening before I turn in, so I know exactly what I'm going to do. I have long conversations with my wife, once or twice a week about what our schedule looks like and how we can make it work, because she's busy, I'm busy, what kids are busy. But I think that there's, like I said, there's two other reasons that I kind of touched upon that doesn't make it overwhelming. Number one, it's refreshing. It's not overwhelming. It's not, God, I'd love to do more politics. No, I'm okay with doing a little bit of this. Oh, I'd love to work with, sports people full time. Obviously the more work, the better. But at the same time, it's fun to do something that all is very similar. And it is extremely similar. Because a lot of it is just about helping people achieve what their goals are. You just have to figure out and tailor it to each individual. Not everything is the same. And, I just make sure that I'm as organized as I possibly can. You make sure that there's as good a balance as there can be amongst the time that you have to spend with clients. I think organization is the answer to a lot of life's problems, and I don't think people are willing to make sacrifices in order to get organized, and how much easier it will be when they become that. So, and we really stress that with everybody that we work with, so I try to use that as an example for myself.
No, it makes a lot of sense. It's funny, so with my son this year, I have 3 kids, and my oldest, they all have different skills or different interests or different ways of doing things. Like my middle child, my daughter, is extremely organized to she gets it all done. My son is not as organized. And one of the things when we started school this year is to start off on the right foot and to be organized, to make sure your locker's organized, to make sure your bag's organized, so things don't come back crumpled. Like papers are like, what is going on here? Like, you did your homework, but it's in a big ball. And that's frustrating. And I can see that over the course of a year, it just only accumulates, right? It's just things accumulate in your car or in your closet or whatever that might be. So it was like really working on getting him ahead of that and staying organized, because I feel like, that will help your schoolwork. Like it seems odd, I would think, to many people, like, well, why would that make me better at school? Is because you're starting, I think that's what you're trying to say, is you're starting at a better place and you're ahead of the game as opposed to behind. And organization can help you do that.
Absolutely. That's 100% right. And I think that if you look at those that are successful, they are all extremely organized. And because they all understand what their goals are, they all understand what they have to achieve in that particular moment. I think that people that are organized understand the importance of the process, and understand that outcome matters, of course, but you can't achieve specific outcomes unless you take the right steps along the way to get there. And the emphasis on process is really key to that, and part of that emphasis on process is being organized and understanding what you have to do right that very second, and what's the best way that you can focus, and what are the skills and the techniques that you need to do in that moment to be successful. And organization is so much of one of those big pillars that you would say, one of the key pillars to being successful. And it doesn't matter if you're in sports or in business or your life, that stuff is extremely important.
Yeah, it covers everything. And process is funny too, because the way we met was, I heard you on the Gary Vaynerchuk show, on his Ask Gary V show, and he talks a lot about the process, right? His whole thing is, I'm going to buy the New York Jets, but it's more about the journey, the process of getting there, not the actual outcome of buying the Jets. And so anyway, but that's how we that's how we connected. And so I was listening to the podcast version of that show. I was at the pool one day, and it was funny. You caught my attention, and he had asked you when I think they called you up. It's one of those shows where they call you, and he asked where you're from, and you said the greatest city, the greatest town in the world, and he said, oh, New York City. You said no, Charleston, South Carolina, and I was like bursting out laughing. So I liked you immediately, and I wanted to connect with you, but it was weird. I only knew 3 things about you: your first name, Chris, the city you live, Charleston, and your occupation being a sports psychologist. But I was able to find you on Twitter, right? It's a little bit stalkerish,
Yep.
but like, what's your take on our connected world now and how it relates to business?
It is a little bit stalker-like, right? I mean, I think that we all kind of have to admit that. It's a little odd, the things that you can find. So I think that obviously making sure that you have an understanding of what you want to have made public and made private, that there's a boundary there and you understand what that is. But getting more specifically to your question, I think that now with the kind of world that we're in, it's a great opportunity in our history to connect with one another in a way that we might not know people. I mean, how would you know me 30 years ago? More than likely, you probably would. There's a guy who lives in Mount Pleasant who we missed each other in graduate school by about a year, half a year. He is the sports psychologist for the Colorado Rockies, and he lives 3 miles from my house. And I know him because he went to Fullerton, but I found out about him online. And we just found each other. We would not have probably found each other if it wasn't for that, right? So I think it opens up the opportunity for us to build relationships that we wouldn't have before. I think that you can read and learn things much faster. And I'm a big reader, so I mean, obviously there's things that we can all learn from faster. I really don't care about if someone made zucchini bread or if they took their dog on a walk, right? I mean, that kind of stuff doesn't interest me. However, I think that we now live in a world where we can be connected with one another all the time. And, you have to be willing to take risks and build relationships with people that you really wouldn't, and say like, hey, I'm willing to do this. I saw this on your site. I'd love to chat, the same way that you and I connect, which is the same way that people connect with me. So I do think that it's a little, it can cross a line, right? But I also think that the opportunity for us to communicate and learn has never been greater. And if you're not taking advantage of that with your business, you're really being foolish. And it's challenging, but you need to be able to put yourself out there and take the best risk that you can in order to build something a little bit better for yourself.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. And that's what you did with the Gary Vee show, and you put yourself out there. That's not that easy to get on to any show, any radio show, any podcast, or whatever that might be, and talk about your business. It's hard to do. And like you just said, putting yourself out there is the first step in that. And then, like you said, there's a boundary there, but when you connect with someone, you can easily, draw the line and say, oh, this guy's for real or he's not. And it's like when you and I connected, we could have had one conversation and been like, let's move on. This isn't going anywhere. This is
right.
Not what I had in mind. But, instead, I think we hit it off in a different way. And here we are having a podcast show together. So I think that's
right.
really cool. And that is putting yourself out there. And then all of a sudden now you're going to meet new people as a result of being on this show, hopefully, right? That's the idea with this podcast, is this platform. And then people can learn who you are and faster. I always talk to people about when they listen to the podcast, how do they listen to it? Do they listen to it at normal speed? Because I listen at 1.5 or 2 times speed, not because I don't want to get it over with, but because time is limited. So get through it. Just like you're saying, you can read or you can listen to a book, and you can listen to an Audible book at 1.5 or 2 times speed. If you can take information in that fast, it's amazing how fast you can get and learn something new, right?
I agree.
Yeah. So you're talking about marketing, and psychology world is something that a lot of the audience might not be familiar with. But what's your take on marketing? And maybe it's similar to everything else that's going on out there right now, but what are some differences that are unique to you?
Yeah, I wouldn't say the sports psychology profession is new, but it's still not where it should be as far as the amount of people that should utilize us for what we do. And it's been around for a long time, but mainly parents, coaches, and players think that it's not as vital as going to the gym. and lifting weights, or it's not as vital as getting 2 more hours in of practice a week. I would disagree with that. I think that skill, craft, and mind are just as important. Skill, body, and mind rather are just as important. I think they play an equal role in things. One of the things that they're much more advanced in Europe about the willingness to use mental training. I think that people think, well, I have to go see a sports psychologist because I'm all messed up, and that's really not true. Why not make sure you're confident all the time? How can you build confidence all the time? So getting back to what you were saying is that what you have to do from the marketing perspective is really produce a lot of content in which people can see where you're coming from, the thoughts on popular sporting events, things that in the success that you've had in the past. And again, you have to be willing to take a risk, talk about the success that you've had, and make it clear that you're an expert in this field, that you're not a snake oil salesman, which I think there aren't a lot of. There is in every field, but I do think that you can run into some people that don't have certifications or master's degrees and things like that. But I think that you have to be willing to produce content. I think you have to be willing to put yourself out there in whatever social media platform you think is necessary for you in the region that you're in, the time that you're in, things like that. But talk about what your expertise is and try to talk about it at least once a week. I wish I could talk about it more. But obviously we have, work that we've got to do. But, I think that, the more that you can produce in what we're doing to show people how you can help them when they struggle, whether it's in sports or whether it's in politics or whether it's in business, you try to make it clear to them that you can, provide certain services specific to what they might be, dealing with. So, and that's really, I think, what we try to do.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And so with you, and you were talking about like the region that you're in, like you're in a small, I guess Charleston's obviously grown quite a bit, as we know. I went to school at the College of Charleston, family lives there half the year, and I'm down there quite a bit doing work and only 3 hours away. But, Charleston overall is a small town. There's no, the Division I program, there's a College of Charleston, but there's no pro sports teams. You have some minor league teams there, and, working with athletes that I would assume most of them aren't in Charleston. It's great because like you can connect with people all over the country very easily. But what's it like building a business where you're having, conversations and meetings with people that aren't there, and you are building a business in the city of Charleston, where if you were in LA or New York or Chicago, it might be easier from that standpoint, right?
Correct. We are lucky enough to where we've had a good amount of Charleston clients, but a lot of the work that we do are with clients that aren't here. And communication is your best friend. If you can't communicate, and if you can't talk to someone whose sole relationship that you have is how you talk to them, right? Then you're done. You could be the greatest expert in the world, but if you can't talk to someone, and show that you're organized, right? Going back to organization. If you can't speak and be organized, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble. And we really try to make sure that we have a good relationship with the people that we work with that aren't in Charleston frequently, that we're on the phone with them frequently, that we Skype when necessary with them, that we show that we're invested and, not have it be a farce. We are invested in them, and communicate effectively. Don't just try to look at the phone call or the Skype session like it's 10 minutes that you got to get done. Probe, be invested, be in the moment, which is, again, key to everything that we do. But the more in the moment we are with people, the biggest benefit that we can help people with, and that's what we really try to do. So, I think that as far as the far away stuff goes and remote work, it's just about how invested you're going to be in that moment and how well you can communicate with them in order to help them. And that's really one thing that we pride ourselves on, and it seems to be working very well so far.
That's
so
good.
Yeah,
that's good. All right, so we've communicated. You work with me, let's say, and we've communicated. I'm a golfer, I'm not a professional golfer, but we've communicated, and you're kind of helped me get my head right for my next match or whatever that might be. And all of a sudden, now I'm out there, and you're not with me. So I'm a golfer, and this is a true story, right? My index is an 8.1. I don't play like it recently. And I'm on the fourth hole, and I just three-putted the third hole. So I'm a little annoyed, a little frustrated, a little concerned. And now I need to make this putt, or I risk three-putting 2 holes in a row. What should I be thinking as I stand over that putt?
I mean, I think number one is that we need to have an awareness that you're pissed off, right? Have an awareness that you're not where you're supposed to be. I like to use a thing to where we say we're checking our signal lights. There's a statement, and a lot of research has been done on that, where we're checking our lights and we're like, all right, are we red? Are we really pissed off? Would this in this moment be the best time for me to hit the ball, knowing that I'm frustrated? Am I yellow, where I'm kind of making, a little bit better, and I'm like, things are getting better, okay? Or am I green, where I'm like, I'm calm, I'm confident, I'm in the moment. What really didn't happen, what happened previously matters, right? But what more matters is that I make an adjustment, get back to my routine, make sure that I understand how I can make my corrections, and control myself internally. And that's what I would suggest, is that let's first develop a routine in which you're examining your emotions in a rational manner. Because then my bet is that you go 3-putt, 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 you automatically just think you're a crappy golfer. And that's not true, right? Golfing is tough. It's a very tough mental game. You're going to fail. So how do we deal with that failure? Can we focus and learn skills in the moment? So when we know we're not in a good place, can we refocus, right? And learn the skills to refocus, to calm ourselves down, put ourselves in the right place, and go right back into taking the shot.
Then connecting that with an article that we wrote on our content platform, Sportsepreneur, we wrote an article about don't let fear get in the way of your job. And in the article, we discussed how everybody experiences fears in their life, but you can't let it affect your job. Many athletes experience fear with nerves or mental issues heading into a game. As a sports psychologist, talk to us about this issue with athletes and how they can overcome mental issues and focus on their craft. And then related, obviously it all relates to an entrepreneur or business owner as they work on their business and they go through these struggles as well.
Fear is important. I think people like to say, well, I'm not going to be afraid. I'm just going to go in and do it. I have no fear and all this stuff. I mean, fear is important, right? Because fear tells you what you're doing in that moment and how you need to react, right? So like, well, I'm afraid of doing this. Well, why are you afraid of doing this? Well, if I fail, my girlfriend's going to dump me. My parents aren't going to talk to me. I'm going to get cut from the team, and I'm going to be homeless. And that's really what happens, right? Is people tend to make tremendous over-exaggerations about what's going to happen when they become afraid and then think about how they're going to fail or what happens when they fail. And the truth of the matter is there needs to be 2 things that I think they can focus on. Is number 1 is control what you can control, right? There's only certain things you can't control. You can control your effort. You can control your emotions. If you're an athlete, you can control how invested you are in that moment. The same thing with business, right? And there's certain things that you don't have control over. You don't have control of the market in business, right? You don't. You react to the market. You deal with what the market is doing. You deal with people within that market. In politics, you don't control a lot. You can control your message, right, and how we react to certain things. Nonprofit world, the same thing. You can react to the amount of donations that are coming in a rational manner. And in sports, it's the same thing. So number 1, control what you can control. And then again, I think number 2 is that be invested in living in the moment. If awareness is only like 3 or 4 of all the things that you're doing, like ranked, right? Let's say you're ranking like what your priorities are as a business person, and it's, well, I want to make a hell of a lot of money. If awareness is like 4th or 5th, you're in trouble. It should be, number 1, I would say awareness is just as important in sports as it is in business, because you have to be aware of what's working and what's not. You have to be aware of how you're talking to people and how you're not. You have to be aware of how organized you are and when you're not. And that awareness can really make big differences. And that's what I would say is important. So fear's good because you need to know how you react to fear. and it'll allow you to take more risks, allows you to act more rationally in the moment when you need to. And I think, fear is one thing that will allow you to really to be your best self. And running away from fear because of something a thought that might be irrational, that doesn't help you at all. Get invested in the moment, do the best you can right here, right now, and then do it again.
Okay, so then for you, what is your biggest fear in your business life?
I mean, isn't the fear of every business owner that you're not going to make enough money to, continually grow? I mean,
yeah.
Let's just, honestly, it's always like, how every day it's like, okay, what can I do to continue to make the train run and continue to make it gain more cars, right? But I really don't worry about that much, because I know the things that I can control, and I know the things that I want to do. I think you have to make sure you're always aware if you're quote unquote hustling enough, right? But the most important thing to me is my family, and that my wife is okay, and that my kids are okay. That's what's important. And in business, if things work out, great. And I'm going to make sure I do everything within my power that it does. But if I can, I work from the house, but my wife can come home, my kids can go home safe, and they're in a good place, then I can be more invested in my work, because I know they're okay. And when they're not, work matters, but who gives a damn, really? It's about them and about making sure that they're okay. So, really, I think obviously trying to make things grow, but if they're the people in my life that matter, and the things in my life that matter, and that's what I think is important. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, obviously you have a good head on your shoulders, and being a sports psychologist certainly helps. But it's important because I think anyone listening to this, myself included, you can take a lot from what you're saying to make sure, because there's going to be struggles, you're going to have fears, but you keep going back to the point of being present and understanding what's important to you. And when you do all those things, the fears don't mean as much anymore. The little struggle that you have during the day, the whatever that might be, you didn't get a sale, you lost a client, whatever those things that pop up, if your head's on straight, like you're saying, and you can be present and just get back to work, and remember what's most important, there's a lot of good that can come from it. And you're obviously, talking to us about that.
I think, and one thing that I would say that I could add is that in business, you have to understand what your business's values are. And if you can't name the mission statement of your organization or the values within your organization, whether it's a team, whether it's a business, whether it's a nonprofit, whether it's an individual, right, who's focused around these core values, who has a mission statement. The second that you have people that get away from that, the second that you get away from that, everything's going to be in trouble. So constantly having an awareness of making sure that you're continually acting in a way that best represents the values of your business and yourself, then I think you're going to be in a good place, to do well.
Yeah, and that also that goes into all the culture and everybody working together as a team, which I'm sure you see in sports organizations right now, that the culture is everything, and everybody understanding the mission. They're at the same goals, the same understanding, and working together to achieve whatever it is that they're trying to achieve.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah, so that's great. So I really appreciate those responses you've had to that line of questioning that we just gave you. It definitely helps me out, and I know it's going to help a lot of the listeners. Don't go anywhere, because we are going into some rapid fire questions right after this message. We would like to take a quick moment to tell you about an organization we work closely with called RODS, which stands for Racing for Orphans with Down Syndrome. We are a proud supporter of RODS Racing. The RODS mission is to nurture a positive image of Down syndrome, to promote awareness for the adoption of orphans with Down syndrome, and by participating in organized athletic races and awareness events. Ultimately, the goal is to find homes for all orphans with Down syndrome. Because of our relationship with the founder of RODS, Brady Murray, we are honored to be able to contribute our work in the area of marketing to create even more awareness around RODS and their mission. You can learn more about RODS at rods.org. And now we will go into the more rapid fire approach. We're going to throw some questions at you and ask for some quick responses back. You ready to get started?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
All right. So what book are you reading right now?
Oh, man, I read about 4 at a time. I read about 4 or 5 a month. And so I have 4. So I'm reading Return of the King, the story about LeBron James and when he came back to Cleveland. That's pretty good. I'm reading a book called On Writing Well, which is just about writing. It's if you're wanting to become a writer or trying to work on your craft as a writer, that's an excellent book. Reading The Daily Stoic, which is a daily reading of quotes from Stoics and thoughts from Ryan Holiday, who is an outstanding author. And then another one it's called The Education of Henry Adams, which is really the story of the great-grandfather of John Adams and John Quincy Adams' grandson, and really about his life. It's just a well-written.
Yeah. So for those types of books, or for those books, are you reading those? How are you reading those?
Everything is hardcover.
Okay.
I don't do Audible. I don't do not hardcover. I'd say some is hardcover, some is paperback. But I like to read. I like to go to the bookstore or Amazon and buy one. It's just if I podcast, I do stuff like your show and stuff like that if I'm listening to something on my phone. But I just like the idea of getting a book and reading it in my hand.
Yeah. So The Daily Stoic, I have not read that, but I read his The Obstacle is the Way by Ryan Holiday. And I don't know, have you read that
It's
book?
really good. Ego is the Enemy is another book of his, which is very excellent. And The Perennial Seller is another really good book. I mean, I'm a big fan of Ryan's, and his work is just spectacular.
Yeah, I would agree. So what is your favorite social media network and why?
Probably Twitter. I'm on there the most because there's more articles on there for me to read and information comes in quicker. Facebook is just too much me knowing about people's lives that it really doesn't matter to me what, if you went and purchased a pen. They're my friends.
Well, but, the most important thing I would give to anyone on Facebook is to control the feed. And it's hard. It takes a little bit of time. And not to say like you want to unfriend people, but you can unfollow them so their stuff will not show up. And anytime you want to
trust me,
out,
I have done that. I have done that. I can't stand it.
Yeah.
But definitely I would think Twitter is my favorite because, it's important, I think, with politics to stay involved in the news and obviously everything that's going on in other worlds. So Twitter for sure I think was my favorite.
Okay, so what social media app confuses you the most?
If it confuses me, I probably don't use it.
Which social media? All right, so you know what the big ones are. Like, which one don't you use?
Yeah, Instagram I think is good. I have a problem with Instagram on the computer.
Yep.
I guess Twitter is fine. I've started using Anchor more. I'm learning more about that. So I wouldn't say confuse me, but I'm still kind of learning the rules of that. And Facebook. So I really try to keep things simple. One of the things for the business is you're trying to figure out what the best medium is for you. And sometimes, you just become overwhelmed with trying to put out content on 15 different mediums. So I've really kind of learned to lessen the amount of stuff that I post and keep it simple for myself, and those are the 4 or 5 places where I tend to go.
I gotcha. So we're on Anchor, so we'll have to connect there. Someone else that we've interviewed recently, we met on Anchor, and what's cool about Anchor is that it's you get the tone. It's like you and I having a conversation right now. I can understand what you're saying. I love to read just like you, and I do many books at the same time in many different ways. But there's something about having a conversation, a one-on-one, a Skype, a meeting, face-to-face type of thing that that audio gives you what the person's trying to say and how they're saying it. And I think that goes a long way.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of it. I think.
Yeah, so what is one thing you would tell an up-and-coming entrepreneur to focus on?
If you're working hard, you're probably not working hard enough. And then I would also say one thing. I would say, find what your strength is. You need to get better at the things that you're not good at. But I would say find what you're really good at and then go and do that. But also be prepared to make a lot of sacrifices. Putting in hard work just doesn't mean working a lot of hours. It means removing crappy people from your life. It means making sacrifices in your social life. It means, stopping opportunities that you really want to have. So, find out what you're good at, and then just be prepared to make sacrifices and work in ways that you haven't really understood what hard work is yet.
Yeah, no, I think that's very well said, because you can get caught up in whether it's doing the little mundane work, right, and think that you're busy. I work 12 hours today, I work 15 hours today, but what did you actually do? What did you actually accomplish? Right. And staying organized, right? I think staying organized can allow you to actually work less hours, but work better, or work more hours and double your productivity. Is there anything that you use as far as a device or an application on your phone that helps you stay organized? It helps you with your productivity?
I would say that I'm just a big fan of making sure everything is on my Google Calendar.
Yeah.
Everything is on there. I also use the reminders a lot. I use the notes section on my iPhone a lot, which is a running to-do list. With a lot of projects that I have that are long-term, I have a notes section for each one of those. So I'm constantly writing stuff down. The other thing I do is not just on my phone, but I have a small notebook that's 2 inches by 3 inches. I have a handful of those that I carry around a pen with me all the time, and I'm writing ideas in there also. So yeah. I'm always trying to make sure that I write down what I'm thinking, and I've tried different apps before, but notes and calendars seems to be the best for me.
Well, a theme that's consistent with everything that you're saying is keeping things simple. Creating simplicity in your life, creating simplicity for other people in their lives to focus on what's most important. Is that an accurate assessment?
Yeah. Don't complicate it if it works.
Yeah.
Use technology, but if it's complicated, great. Just make sure you understand how to do it and make it easy for you.
Yeah, that's great. So what's a quick personal story that got you where you are today?
Oh, man. I think I thought about this one too. And, I think that I can't say, well, I can say this accurately, that without my wife, I don't think that this business would be possible. There's no one more patient. I told her that when I got done with the presidential campaign, which was a year, which was very hard, 20 hours a day, a lot of the time, for a long time, I went to her and I said, I think when we started that campaign, I said, I think this is going to be the last one. And she said, good. But was also trying to keep the window open and never close it, the fact that we did the other ones. But then I said I wanted to do this. And she didn't say no. She said, just make it work.
Yeah.
And, the first couple months in a business are never roses. And, we went from very little in the first year to the second year where we're making, 4 or 5 times as much as what we made in the very first year. So I'm really looking forward to seeing what's going to happen after that. But I would say if there's any story, it's, it would just be the fact that she was able to has been supportive of this. That's gotten me really where I am. I've been with my wife since I was 16 years old, and there is no greater support mechanism that I have than her.
Yeah, no, I can understand that. Having that stability and having that relationship, it's very important. So as you're just talking about how you've gotten business and your business has grown, what is the number one way you get business today?
It's kind of mixed. We have a website. You can go to our website at achievementconsultingllc.com, and there's just an easy sign-up page. So we get a lot of sign-ups of people requesting help. We get a lot of referrals from people that are in professional sports right now that might be a client of ours, and from just a long list of connected networks in politics and in nonprofits. The political and nonprofit world is very small. Very small. Everybody kind of knows who everyone is. So when they're looking for specific things, and associates that I work with and friends that I know, we all try to help one another. So it's really a mixture of people finding out what we do online, along with a lot of word of mouth and relationship, past relationship.
Yeah, that makes sense. So with as you build your business and as you've kind of made your way around our country, I'm assuming you've met with a lot of teams, and you still are a fan of sports. Obviously, if you work in that area, if there was one sports team you could root for, what team would that be?
The Chicago Bulls in the last couple of years. My son is named. I have a 6-year-old named Jordan, who's after Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
Every game was, my athletic world revolved around him. So the Chicago Bulls are definitely up there. They've broken my heart enough times in the last couple of years to where I've really had a bad taste in my mouth a little bit, but I'm still going to cheer. But I would say probably the University of Southern California football. And Fullerton baseball. There's so many teams that I was involved with when I was younger.
Yeah.
That I just ended up being a part of, and building not just a relationship but a fan base with, and to be in Southern California in 2002 to 2004, where I was in Southern California my whole life until 2004, but to be down there and be a part of that, and to see USC football, and to see so many Heisman Trophy winners and national championships.
They were phenomenal. So obviously they slipped, but they're back.
I will definitely continue to root for them. I told my wife that I really don't have many fans. I really don't have many teams that I root for or get nervous for, but it's college football season, and I'm hoping that we're in the playoff.
Yeah, there you go. Well, they struggled early, but they pulled away late. USC, Western, was it?
I know. They were trying to scare the hell out of me.
But they should pick it back up, and they got an awesome team, and obviously they have a quarterback that you have teams in the NFL that are tanking for. So,
God, he's good. He's unreal, isn't he?
Yeah, Sam Darnold. Yeah, he's fantastic. So it'll be an interesting year to watch. What plays out. I think there's a lot of good teams this year. So we'll see what happens there. As far as the NFL is concerned, do you have any predictions for us for the Super Bowl this year?
Man, it's hard to say. How can you sit there and say that anyone except the Patriots?
Right.
Yeah. It's there. The culture there is so steeped, and Tom Brady's the greatest football player of all time. They have the greatest coach of all time. It's hard to sit there and vote against them, right?
Yeah.
But I think Seattle will have a chance to do well, and I think a team that I'm hoping does well. As a surprise team, I would say that Oakland, I think, has a great opportunity. I think Derek Carr is really special. But it's hard to not put your money on the Patriots if you bet. I don't. If you did, how do you not put your money on them? Every year they're there, so we'll see.
Yeah, they'll be in the running. Well, it's been great, and I definitely want to give you a last word here with words of encouragement for the audience, and then also follow that up with, you've already given them your website, but if there's any social or email or phone you'd like to give out so people can connect with you, because I want to encourage people to certainly do that, floor is yours.
No, I appreciate this has been a great experience having on, and I really appreciate it. And I think, like we said, build to your strengths and be aware of what you're doing, and be available. And when we say be available, be willing to be aware. Not just, okay, I'm going to listen to what my head says, and I'm going to listen to what my body's telling me. Just relax and be in the moment. Be in the moment. Be there. And if you can really be here, really be in the moment, and do what you can to make sure that you continually stay there, you're going to be in great shape. And it's been fun having to see so many people in politics and in sports do that and be successful, and looking forward to doing that with more people here in the future. And people can find us online. Again, our website is achievementconsultingllc.com. You can email me personally, Chris@achievement. That's with a T, so just achievementllc.com. You can find us on Twitter at Achievement Sports, Facebook Achievement Sports, Instagram Achievement Sports. Love to hear from anybody who's out there. Love to work with anybody who's looking to get some help on the mental game or business or anything.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put all this in the show notes description so people can have access to that. But we really do appreciate it. You bring great perspective to it. So thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you, Eric. I really appreciate it.
Chris, it was absolutely awesome having you on this podcast. From the clear focus Chris provides athletes and leaders to the development of his business, Chris gives us a great example of how to build a company with leadership. The perspectives he brings as a founder and CEO are now perspectives you as a business owner and entrepreneur can use for yourself. And for that, Chris, thank you. And for any business owner or entrepreneur that is looking to boost productivity, get organized, or learn more about mental training, I would encourage you to reach out to Chris. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me directly. You can contact me on Twitter at Eric_Kaz or with the same name on Instagram, or you can find us at KazSource.com with links to us on the different social networks. Thank you for listening to our KazSource podcast, Entrepreneur Perspectives, building and protecting your business one podcast at a time. And until next time, we're out of here. A big thanks to Rods Racing for their support of this podcast and allowing us to contribute to their inspiring cause. Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. It's a big deal to us. We hope you found value in it, and if you did, we would be incredibly grateful if you gave us a review on iTunes. Remember to subscribe to this podcast and feel free to share it with anyone you know. More than anything, thank you again for listening. We appreciate it.